I just lost.
Mute you. I'm sorry. I got you. All right, cool. Said you unmuted me. All right. So hey everybody. So as Crystal said, my name is Barry B. Mixon, and I was born 1960 in the old Harlem Hospital. My mother used to always say that I wasn't born in a new one, the old Harlem Hospital, which is was kind of funny because when they built the new one, she told people that well, she told me that I wasn't her child, that there was a mistake. So that kind of gives you an idea of the kind of childhood that I had growing up. Um, I have three brothers. Well, actually, three brothers and a sister. Grew up in Harlem, moved to the South Bronx, and then we moved to Jamaica, Queens, and that's how I wound up going to Jamaica High School. My childhood was not the best. Not the best. My mom was an alcoholic, a serious alcoholic, so there was a lot of issues with me growing up. And like Jamaica High School, one of the things I love about Crystal is Crystal, when you invited me to the reunion, it really filled a lot of holes inside of me because I had forgotten. Not I knew Jamaica High School. I even remembered the address because I spent 14 years in the Marine Corps. You used to always have to put your address. So 16701 Gothic Drive. I knew that like I knew it, like my name. And I didn't remember high school because I tell people all the time, a lot of kids grow up with their mom or dad. I grew up with a dragon. You know, my mom was kind of a dragon. And I understand it now. You know, therapy is a wonderful thing. Um, but that's what got me into doing what I do today. So that was my childhood. I was in the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps in 1978. Literally, I turned 18 in boot camp, which was the worst birthday gift I ever had. My worst birthday I ever had in my life. Um, did 14 years in Marine Corps. Not all active duty. Got out. Got married. Things as had kids. Um, my kids had passed away. Actually, they died. And I was homeless in 1992. I was living all over the country, trying to. Those are my kung fu years, as I call it, and wound up being in Chicago, Illinois, in the summer of 1992. And by the winter of that year, I was homeless, and for a year, living in the streets of Chicago, and everything kind of starts from there, as far as just finding out who I was, going from my mom used. I thought my name. Excuse me. I know this is a family show, but I thought my name. I thought my name was. It is a family show. I thought my name was Butthole until I was like 12. When my mother told me, I saw the birth certificate one day sitting on my mother's bed. I remember like it was yesterday, and I looked at it. My mother said, "You can look at it," and I was like, "Okay." And it said, "I said Barry Mixon," and I said it like it was somebody else. And she said, "That's your name." And I remember saying, kind of in joke and kind of serious, like, "That's my name," because my name was everything else other than that. And
Wow.
that's how
So,
I wound up being homeless. Yeah, because of just the anger inside of me.
so let me ask you this. So, was you outspoken and telling stories and doing all that as a child, like in elementary school?
People ask me that often because I'm a gemmological storyteller. No, I really was shy. I was really a shy kid. The way I learned how to tell stories was I'm a television kid. I grew up with television. My mother put me like the 60s. We all grew up in the 60s. Television was just getting bigger and bigger. And I was one of these kids that my mother would put me in front of the television as a babysitter. And because of what I was going through with my mom and my family, my own self esteem, television and movies were my escape. We didn't go to movies back then so much, but television was my escape. So I literally lived my life through Jacques Cousteau and Mutual Omaha, Wild Kingdom, and the Cosby Show and all soap operas, all these things. So that's when I began to understand the power of stories. And my mother was a hopeless romantic. So I would watch all the romantic movies on Humphrey Bogart, all these different things, and she would be crying. And then eventually I learned when I should be crying in the movies, and I got real sensitive. So that's how I learned how to tell stories.
So, do you remember the very first time that you told a story? I mean, when I talk about a story, I mean like something that starts with that beginning, the middle, and the end that has a whole theme to it. where you used your imagination and you really had something to share. Do you remember how old you was when you did that?
Really, the concept of stories really happened for me when I was homeless, because I thought I was going to die. Like I said, I came to Chicago in July of 1992. By December, began to really no, by October, I began to understand that, wow, I'm moving towards homelessness, and because I didn't have family, I didn't have friends. So by December 15th, I know exactly the date. I remember talking to God because I thought death was going to happen at any time. In fact, there were days when it was like, can we just get this over with? And that's
Wow.
when, yeah, literally. I mean, in the winter, you guys know Chicago. So imagine being in Chicago. This winter was okay. This winter was like summertime for me in comparison to the way winter was, 10, 15, 20 below, and I'm outside. So it wasn't to that day that I began to pray to God to just either take me out or give me, if you could get me out of this some kind of way, that I promise God that I would spend the rest of my life helping people figure out their value, figure out who they are. And that's when stories really started evolving. And it was this book. This is the actual book that I had. You can see how beat up it is, that I had when I was homeless, because I just had my duffel bag and whatever little stuff that I had, duffel bag meaning like the Marine Corps bag. And this book I had stuffed in the side thinking I would read it one day. And since I wasn't going to church and I knew I didn't have enough time to quote the Bible, how people quote the Bible, Job said, and I'm like, no, I ain't got that. Not to mention, I didn't feel good about talking to God like that, because I felt like God would say, oh, now you want to talk to me. You didn't want to talk to me. Now you in a sling. Now you want. And I was just like, I ain't coming to heaven like that. I'm not doing that. So God brought me this book. And that's when I began to tell stories, because there's a quote in there that I would say literally every single day, every hour of every day, that got me to understand stories. So the first time I actually told a story where it was a beginning, middle, end was when I was in Toastmasters in 2009. And they said to me, it was the international speech contest. And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. I figured I was going to lose. I've lost all the time. So, okay, what's the worst that can happen? And they said, what are you going to talk? I said, what do I talk about? They said, tell a story, tell something. And I was like, okay. So at that time, my first story was about Star Wars. I'm a huge, huge, huge Star Wars. Star Wars is like religion for me. Okay. Not like it is religion for me. And that was the first story I told, was
Wow.
this January 2009.
Wow.
I told that story of when I saw Star Wars. We were still in Jamaica High School. Me, Barry Watkins, who else went? I forgot. And they left me. So I didn't go that day. I went the next day. And when I saw Star Wars, it just changed my life.
So Barry,
Mm-hmm.
let me ask you this. So what was the name of that book that you were carrying around?
This book is called, this book is called The Wisdom of James Allen. But the book, there's like 5 books in here. But the book that that really truly changed my life is a book called As a Man Thinketh. As a Man Thinketh. And there is this part in it, if you don't mind, let me just say that part that changed my life, if you don't mind.
Please.
It's on, it's literally, I know the page is like on page 53, so it's not even that long, just one quote in there. It says, though your circumstances may be uncongenial, they shall not long remain so, but perceive an idea. You cannot strive within and striving in and not make it without. I'm sorry, I'm messing up right a little bit.
That's okay. Start over. You got it.
Here is the youth. I'm sorry. I just want to get that part. Say,
yes.
Though your circumstances may be uncongenial, they shall not long remain so, but perceive an idea and strive to reach it. You cannot travel within and stand still without. So I'm gonna put the book down just to let you know that. Sometimes if I don't do it, it takes me a second. Here is the youth, hard pressed by poverty and labor, confined long hours in an unhealthy workshop, unschooled, and lacking all the arts of refinement. but he dreams of better things. He thinks of intelligence, of refinement, of grace and beauty. He conceives of, mentally builds up an ideal condition of life. The vision of a wider liberty and a larger scope takes possession of him. Unrest urges him to action. And he utilizes all his spare time and means, small though they are, to the development of his latent powers and resources. Very soon, so altered has his mind become that the workshop can no longer hold him. It has become so out of harmony with his mentality that it falls out of his life as a garment, is cast aside. And with the growth of opportunity which fit the scope of his expanding powers, he passes out of it forever. Years later, we see this youth as a full-grown man. We find him a master of certain forces of the mind which he wields with worldwide influence and almost unequal power. In his hands, he holds the cords of gigantic responsibilities. He speaks, and lo, lives are changed. Men and women hang upon his words and remold their characters, and sun-like, he becomes the fixed and luminous center around which innumerable destinies revolve. He has realized the vision of his youth. He has become one with his ideal.
Wow.
And I used to say that every single day, sometimes every hour of every day, because the thing that got me about that was that he didn't get the homeboy hookup. Nobody hit the lottery. Nobody gave him nothing. He didn't have anything. The only thing that changed his life was his mind. And when I was living on, those of you who live in Chicago or know Chicago, DePaul University, where Roosevelt Boulevard is, that alley, which is still there, the dumpsters, not the ones that I stayed in, but the dumpsters that I lived in was right there. And I would say that every hour, because I said he didn't have anything. And yet his whole life changed because of his thoughts. And I was like, okay, well, I can do that. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know, it was just like a pipe dream. But I said, maybe if I just say it, maybe if I do the same thing that my Christian friends would do when they would repeat the Bible over and over and over again, they would embody it. I said, maybe if I do that it would come true to me. And
Wow.
when I competed, actually, I did the Star Wars speech. It was called The Return of the Jedi when I did it in 2009. I didn't win. I came in second place. And in 2012, I did a speech called In the Winter of 1992. And that was the speech I did at the World Championship of Public Speaking.
Wow. So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
As a man thinketh, that's a powerful scripture in the Bible. As a man thinketh, so is he.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard you talk about how it impacted you. And when people go to create a story and identify what makes them so passionate about life,
mm-hmm.
it has to start with their thought process, because people have to sometimes change their mindset from their circumstances. Like you gave the example of your homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
I want to dive into that for a minute, because I'm sure when you realized you were going to be homeless, at first, your mind was totally different. I mean, how did you change your mindset? I mean, because when you were first homeless, were you scared? Were you angry? What were you feeling in the beginning?
I became homeless, and the reason why the message, my show, and the message resonates with me, because I became homeless not because of, again, drugs or alcohol. I still don't really drink. I'm probably one of the only Marines in the whole Marine Corps who's never been drunk in his life, because my mom drank, so drinking wasn't my thing. But what I didn't have value. I didn't have value, and that was just a buildup of anger. I was just angry because, again, I was a rock. I was a rock to my mother. I didn't really have, and she loved me. I mean, I'm okay. Her love was just in a different way, and I understand that now. And but then, oh my God, I was filled with rage. I mean, the reason why Star Wars resonated with me in the beginning, because I wanted to be Darth Vader. I was Darth Vader. My call sign in the Marine Corps was Vader. I have Vaders all over my house. Not, I mean, just Vaders. I have posters of Vaders. I have like 2 masks of Vaders. Again, my Marine Corps call sign, because I used to fly, was Vader. If you wanted something bad to happen to somebody, you just called me. And I didn't just like it; I loved it. It was just what I mean. I loved it when I saw that scene. Those of you who are Star Wars scenes, when I saw, which is still one of my favorite scenes in the movie, when I saw Darth Vader choke that guy from like 20 feet away and said, "Your lack of faith disturbs me." That's what I want to be when I grow up. I wanted to be Vader. And it was that anger that was eating me up, that was destroying me. That's why I became homeless. I had 3 degrees. I had a degree in biology, chemistry, and biochemistry when I became homeless. And that was the thing that was a part of my speech. I wasn't just like some guy, in the Marine Corps. I had ribbons, medals, all kinds of stuff, but my soul was ugly. My soul was worthless. I felt worthless.
So that's important that you said that, because a lot of times I think people look down on what you want to call them, derelicts or bums or people they see on the street with the pushing the carts and everything, and they're judging them and they're thinking, oh, okay, he